Hey everyone, my name is Shakeel. Really honored to be here. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for inviting opportunity as a recent graduate of a MFA program. Really happy to be here. What I feel like is still the early stages of my design career. So very honored to be here with many people that I've looked up to. So a little bit about what I'm doing currently. I'm a freelance brand designer at a remote studio called Talisman, and then I also do some independent work as well. So I always like to go back to an origin story in anyone that I'm meeting for the first time. So I grew up in what used to be a small town called Marysville, Washington, which is now much larger than about 10,000 people when I grew up there. Okay, we have some Marysville fans here, apparently. Nice. And so this is the elementary school that I went to called Quilceda Elementary. It was located on an indigenous reservation or Indian reservation, but I am of Indian descent, the country, not the falsely attributed Indian, native Indian, whatever thing that we're dealing with. So I grew up with this identity of being the other Indian, which was a whole nother thing. So that was like fun times. Anyway, so I recently graduated from ArtCenter with my MFA, where I learned a lot about community and conference building when Cheryl was one of my co-professors, among many other very legendary people there. During my thesis year, I came up with sort of the start of my design ethos or ideology. I was really inspired by the wandering that happens during the design process, the exploration, and landed on this idea of a labyrinth. This is, I forget where, but somewhere in downtown LA. A labyrinth is about walking. It's about mindful exploration. And more recently, I've been really interested in this idea of fluidity and fluid careers, going back to this classic Bruce Lee interview. So we'll get into work now. This was probably the most extensive brand identity project I worked on during my MFA, where I got to think about the future of what a brand would look like that's Mid-Journey, which is one of these big generative AI tools that we know, love, and or hate. So they use this very technical aesthetic, and I wanted to lean into what the founder was talking about, which is the reimagining the future of the human species. They had this like really odd line art sailboat logo. I'm like, what can we do with that? So ended up with the simplest abstraction of a sailboat, which I call the sail. I was trying to figure out what colors do you use for a generative AI company before we got these trends and tropes that we see now. I was walking around campus and I saw this light refraction through a glass window. I was like, oh, this is it. One beam of light splits into the full Roy G. Biv color spectrum. The same power is really what generative AI enables. You have one prompt, one text string, and you can get a multitude of images generated on the other end. And so applying that to the rest of the identity system, we have the different colors applied through the different elements in the brand ID. I pushed that forward thinking about like, what does form look like for this thing? I thought about, okay, if they had a conference, what would be a cool thing to do? Maybe people can walk around an installation, a sculpture, and use a microphone to generate images with their voice in real time. And then I got to really push this during the break and think about 3D modeling, learning these tools, and really start to visualize what that could look like. Kind of the other like, what do we call, like a landmark project during my MFA was an identity design for a documentary about Mark Rothko, the amazing abstract expressionist and one of my favorites. These are some posters designed. I was really inspired by the Rothko Chapel in Houston, Texas, which is a space that he designed, which he passed away before was completed. In my research, I found there were all these different types of art that he explored before he landed on those kind of large swaths of color. And that became a really interesting insight. So some editorial spreads for you there. And then this was in my first semester when Sean Adams was our chair. And he's like, hey, I love this. I want it for my office. So very happy to have that. And Sean has now been promoted to a much higher position at the college. But for my first semester, it's always a very tender memory that I have. So type design, you know, Shasa, like I had seen one of your Type Thursday events, I don't know, about 2 years ago when we first met. And that was when I was kind of exploring type design for myself. So this is the first modular typeface that I designed called Referential Mono, where I was looking both at sort of these modular grids, which we see in early computing, but also inspired by my background as a Muslim and looking at Arabic calligraphy. You see this strip here is square Kufic, which was originally kind of invented to bring calligraphy into tile work. And so this was always like a balance going back and forth between technology, design, and all of that. Then I was like, okay, let me do a real typeface. Let me do a real font. So this is called Mindful Roman, which is a transitional serif typeface. And I was really inspired by astrology for this one. So I actually made a birth chart for the typeface. So you can see time of birth was like the final exam or final presentation. Pasadena, you know, it was a Leo, it was summer semester. Then you can see more like the character set, and really fun to just kind of go down that route. Another typeface I'll show is ontology, which I worked on this year in my last semester. Again, going back to Arabic, was really inspired by the calligraphic brushstroke and the hand gestures. Was a little ambitious to design an Arabic typeface while doing my thesis. So ended up having to drop the Arabic halfway through, but still landed on, I think, a pretty interesting, more expressive, maybe human feeling sans serif family across, I believe, 6 weights is where I left it, and we'll pick up at some point. So now our wonderful host today. I remember, I think it was the first day of our graduate seminar class about 1.5 years ago, when Cheryl was telling the class her story, and she brought up this idea of living your thesis. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I mean, we're, you know, pay a lot of money. ArtCenter's not a cheap school. So, you know, get the most out of it, like maybe make a whole career out of it. Got to give a quick shout out to Michael Neal here on the right, who is my thesis advisor and our thesis group within the rest of the larger graduating cohort. So my thesis was called Applied Designer, where I was thinking about the future of graphic design careers. You know, there's a lot of doom and gloom that we're hearing lately. The job market's a mess. Generative AI is coming, like, you know, outsourcing, offshoring, whatever. There's like so many things you could say, like, yeah, graphic design is dead. Okay, sure, that's one perspective. Anyways, during the design process, I leaned into my background as a software engineer, which was before I got into design, and created a generative identity system looking at the form of a dodecahedron, which is a 12-sided shape with pentagons or 5 sides on each of those faces. So that was informed by my design methodologies that I came up with around 5 and 12. So I won't dig into that too much. Part of the 12 was looking at 12 different designer archetypes, or types of designers that are doing something a little bit different than what might be expected in these like classic categories of, oh, you must work in a studio, in an agency, in-house, or freelance. And like, that's it. And funnily enough, Silas was one of my 12 archetypes. So when I got the email from Christina saying like, oh, you're on this panel along with these other people, I'm like, wait a minute, hang on. So, you know, definitely want to have you sign my book afterwards. It's here. So in terms of the community side of things, this has always been like an important part of my involvement with AIGA over like the past 3 years, starting with the Portfolio Festival remotely, and then getting to volunteer at the 2022 Design Conference in Seattle, and got to present at a local chapter conference last year. So as a lot of my friends were struggling to find work after graduation over the summer, I started these WhatsApp communities to just share freelance and job opportunities, because I was seeing things that other people weren't. I don't know how. Maybe I just like gamed the algorithm, followed the right people, whatever. Anyways, we're up to 25 people now, and this is like me doing no marketing at all, and I'm really excited about the potential here of how we can take Applied Designer, have more community support. There's other tools that I built during my thesis, like a quiz to figure out which of the 12 archetypes you are. There's a lot that's in the works that I'm not able to present eloquently today, but hope to do that one day. And as I was preparing my slides, I was really thinking about like what this panel is, right? These are the best BIPOC designers on the West Coast, but why couldn't we have a panel of applied designers perhaps next year at the AIGA conference? So putting that out into the universe, and we'll see what happens. So that's all. Thanks so much.